The neon signs bled pink and blue across the wet sole pavement, turning puddles into kaleidoscopes. Diane Carter stood at the bottom of the marble steps leading to Eclipse, the kind of nightclub where velvet ropes decided your worth and bouncers wore suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Her phone buzzed. "Seo-jun, you coming or what, buddy?" Buddy. That word had followed her like a shadow for 6 months. Through late-night convenience store runs where she'd listened to him complain about difficult clients. Through countless coffee meetups where he'd show her photos of whatever beautiful woman had caught his eye that week. Through every single moment she'd swallowed her feelings and pretended friendship was enough. The bass from inside the club pounded through the walls, matching the erratic rhythm of her heart. She looked down at her worn Converse, the left one held together with tape. The oversized hoodie hung past her hips, shapeless and safe. This was her uniform. Her camouflage. The costume of a woman who had decided that being invisible hurt less than being rejected. 3 weeks ago, someone at Seo-jun's office had joked they looked like a couple. She'd frozen, hope flaring hot and stupid in her chest. Seo-jun had laughed. Actually threw his head back and laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Then he'd ruffled her hair, like she was a child or a pet, and said, "Her? Come on. Diane's my little buddy. My brainy sidekick." Everyone had laughed with him. She'd laughed too. Then went home and cried so hard she threw up. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. She could go home. Heat up instant ramen. Watch something mindless on her laptop. Stay small. Stay safe. Stay invisible. You're really going to let him win? Diane jumped. Yara Mensah stood beside her, appearing like some kind of fairy godmother in designer heels, holding a garment bag and a makeup case. "I don't think I can do this," Diane whispered. Yara's expression softened. She'd been the first real female friend Diane had made in Seoul, a Ghanaian fashion buyer with a sharp eye and a sharper tongue. They'd met at a work networking event where Diane had hidden in the corner and Yara had dragged her out of it. Do what? Walk into a party? Or stop being invisible? What if nothing changes? What if What if everything does? Yara took her hand. "Let me help you become visible, Diane. Not for him. For you." Inside the club, Seo-jun was probably already holding court, surrounded by his people, waiting to laugh at her cargo pants and nervous smile. Waiting for his awkward buddy to give everyone something to joke about. Diane looked at the garment bag, then back at the club entrance. For 6 months, she'd loved him quietly. Desperately. Pathetically. Maybe it was time to love herself loudly. "Okay," she breathed. "Show me." Before we see what happens next, drop a comment and let me know, where are you watching from? Hit that like button, because what Diane does next will change everything. Trust me, someone's world is about to shatter. 6 months earlier. The coffee had been scalding hot, the cup slippery, and Diane's hands shaking from too little sleep and too much anxiety. The collision happened in slow motion, her stumbling, the cup flying, and then expensive black fabric soaking up Colombian roast like a very costly sponge. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She'd grabbed napkins, dabbing frantically at the coat of the most beautiful man she'd ever seen outside of a screen. Sharp jawline. Dark eyes that could cut glass. The kind of presence that made rooms quieter just by existing. Stop. Just stop, Dot. His voice carried irritation and something else. Amusement, maybe? You're making it worse. I'll pay for cleaning. Replacement. Whatever you need. I'm sorry. If you apologize one more time, I'm walking out with your wallet. She'd frozen, mortified. Then he'd smiled. Not kindly. More like a cat that had found an interesting mouse. "You're not from here." "Ohio," she'd stammered. "Originally. I work in data analysis for." "Relax. I'm not interrogating you." He'd taken the napkins from her shaking hands. "I'm Kang Seo-jun. And you are?" "Diane. Diane Carter." "Well, Diane Carter from Ohio." He'd studied her for a long moment. "You're buying me coffee to replace what you destroyed. And you're going to stop looking at the floor like it has the answers to the universe." That should have been it. A weird encounter. An awkward apology. Then nothing. Instead, Seo-jun had stayed. They'd talked for 2 hours. He'd asked about her work with a genuine curiosity that made her feel brilliant instead of boring. She'd made him laugh with a dry observation about Korean workplace culture. When they'd finally parted ways, He'd entered his number into her phone. Text me, buddy. You seem like you could use a friend in this city. Buddy. Even then, their friendship had grown in the spaces between Seoul's loneliness. Late nights at convenience stores where they'd eat ramen standing up, talking about nothing and everything. She'd help him with spreadsheets he never quite explained, numbers that moved through accounts she didn't ask about. He'd drag her to cafes she'd never have tried alone. He talked about women constantly. The marketing executive with legs for days. The art gallery owner who spoke 3 languages. The yoga instructor who could fold herself into impossible shapes. What do you think? He'd ask, showing her photos. Too high maintenance? And Diane would smile and give advice and feel something inside her crack a little more each time. 3 months in, his associate Miho had seen them together at a restaurant. Sia Jana, you didn't tell me you were seeing someone. The hope had been so sudden, so violent, she'd nearly gasped. Seo Jun had snorted. Her? No. This is Diane. My little sidekick. Smartest person I know. 0 game with men. 0 game. Miho had laughed. Seo Jun had laughed. Diane had laughed too, the sound hollow in her own ears. That night, alone in her tiny apartment, she looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. The too big t-shirt hiding curves she'd learned to be ashamed of. The hair pulled back so tightly it gave her headaches. The face scrubbed clean of anything that might draw attention. I'm the girl who doesn't get chosen, she'd whispered to her reflection. I'm the prologue to someone else's love story. But she'd kept showing up, kept laughing at his jokes, kept pretending that friendship was enough. Because crumbs from Kang Seo-jun felt better than starving alone. Present. Yara's apartment looked like a fashion magazine had exploded. Racks of clothes lined the walls, shoes organized by color and heel height, makeup stations that belonged in department stores. Sit, Yara commanded, pointing to a chair facing away from the mirror. I don't know about this. That's because you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to trust. Yara began pulling out dresses, holding them up, discarding them. I know what it's like, you know. Being invisible in a room full of people who look right through you. Diane glanced at her. Yara was stunning, tall, confident, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. I grew up poor in Accra, Yara continued softly. Came to Seoul for university on scholarship. Spent 2 years having people assume I was here to teach English or dance in clubs. Like I couldn't possibly belong in their world. She held up a black dress, simple silk that caught the light. I learned something important. You don't become someone else to be seen. You just turn the lights on. What if nothing changes? Diane's voice cracked. What if I'm just not? What if everything does? The transformation took hours. The dress, not revealing, just present. Makeup that highlighted instead of transformed. Hair released from its perpetual ponytail, falling in natural waves. There's someone coming tonight, Yara said casually, working on Diane's eyes. Elliot Park. Works at my firm. Corporate lawyer. He's asked about you 3 times since the networking event. I don't remember meeting him. You were too busy hiding in the corner, and he was too polite to corner you there. But he noticed. Yara smiled. He's kind, Diane. Actually kind. The kind that asks questions and listens to answers. I don't need. I know. You don't need anyone. Yara turned her toward the mirror. But maybe it's time to see what it feels like when someone wants you. Not who they think you should be. Just you. Diane looked at her reflection. The woman staring back wasn't a stranger. She was just visible. And suddenly, terrifyingly, she didn't want to be Seojin's buddy anymore. She wanted to be someone's choice. Eclipse was exactly the kind of place Seo-jun owned without actually owning. The top floor of a glass tower where Seoul's underground elite mixed with the legitimately wealthy, where deals happened over champagne and threats were whispered between courses of imported caviar. He sat in the center of the VIP section like a king holding court, surrounded by his inner circle. Miho, his right hand, built like a boxer but sharp as a blade. Jaiwon, the crew's tech genius who could make digital footprints vanish like smoke. Sunhee, ice cold and beautiful, who handled their investor relations. So when's your little buddy arriving? Miho asked, grinning around the rim of his whiskey glass. Seo-jun checked his watch, smirking. Any minute now. Watch this. I told her to come dressed up. He leaned back, radiating confidence. She'll probably show up in cargo pants and those ratty sneakers. Maybe she'll actually wear a button-down shirt if we're lucky. Sahi raised an eyebrow. Why invite her if you're just going to make fun of her? I'm not making fun. It's endearing. She's like a puppy that hasn't figured out it's supposed to bark. Seojun waved dismissively. Besides, she's good people. Smart as hell. She just needs to get out more. Bet you 50,000 she shows up looking exactly like she always does, Jaiwon said. Bet you 100,000 she doesn't even show, Miho added. Seojun laughed, that easy confidence of a man who'd never questioned his place in anyone's life. She'll show. She always does. The music had been pulsing with aggressive energy, trap beats, and electronic chaos. Then, suddenly, it shifted. Something slower. Smoother. A sensual rhythm that made people turn toward the entrance. The doors opened. Seojun's smile was already forming, ready to tease, ready to ruffle her hair and make some joke about her finally trying. The smile died on his lips. A woman walked in wearing black silk that moved like water. The dress wasn't revealing, it just revealed. Curves that had always been hidden under shapeless fabric. Skin that caught the low lighting. Hair falling in waves that framed a face he'd seen 1,000 times, but never really looked at. But it was her eyes that stopped him breathing. No longer aimed at the floor. No longer apologetic. Present. Then his brain caught up with his vision. Wait, he breathed. Beside her, a man in a tailored suit had his hand at the small of her back. Not grabbing. Not possessive. Just there. Respectful. Protective. The man looked at her the way people look at art in museums, like she was something precious and rare. Who is that? Miho whispered. Sunhee leaned forward, eyes widening. No. Is that? That's Diane. Jaiwon nearly dropped his drink. That's Diane. Seojun couldn't speak. His glass had stopped halfway to his mouth, suspended in disbelief. This couldn't be her. This couldn't be his buddy, his sidekick, his harmless little friend who needed his protection and guidance. But it was. Her laugh carried across the club, not the nervous giggle he knew, but something genuine and unguarded. The man beside her leaned down to say something, and she tilted her head up, smiling in a way that made Seojun's chest tighten inexplicably. Damn, Miho said slowly. Your little buddy cleaned up real nice. Other men in the club were noticing. Heads turning. Conversations pausing. Someone from another table stood, clearly planning to approach. Seojun's hand tightened around his glass. Diane didn't even look his direction. She and her companion moved through the crowd like they belonged there, like she'd always belonged there, and the world was just now catching up. A guy Seojun vaguely recognized, some startup investor with more money than sense, approached with a bottle of champagne. Offering. Smiling. The man with Diane tall, handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes and an easy smile, politely declined for both of them. Not rude. Not aggressive. Just clear. His hand never left her back, but it never tightened possessively either. Something hot and irrational flared in Seojun's chest. Something that felt uncomfortably like rage but burned differently. You okay? Sahi asked, watching him carefully. Fine. The word came out sharper than intended. Then Diane turned. Her eyes swept the VIP section and landed on him. No wave. No excited smile. No rush to join him like she always did. Just acknowledgement. A slight nod, the kind you'd give an acquaintance at a grocery store. Then she turned back to her companion, laughing at something else he said, and Seojun felt something he'd never experienced in his entire life. Irrelevant. Who's the guy? Miho asked. How should I know? Seojun set his glass down too hard. You invited her. I assumed. I invited her. I don't know anything about him. But he would. He'd find out everything. Because Diane Carter, his Diane, his buddy, his harmless little sidekick, had just walked into his domain looking like a woman who no longer needed him for anything. And Kang Seojun had built an empire on understanding threats. This felt like the most dangerous one yet. Son, he watched him with knowing eyes. You're jealous. Don't be ridiculous. You're jealous of your own friend. I'm not, he cut himself off, jaw clenching. I'm concerned. She doesn't know these people. That guy could be anyone. That guy looks like he stepped out of a law firm commercial, Jaiwon observed. Probably safer than anyone in this room. Including you, Sunhee's expression said without words. Seojun stood abruptly. I'm going to say hello. Sure you are. Miho's grin was knowing. Just saying hello to your buddy. But as Seojun started toward her, Diane and her mysterious companion moved toward the dance floor. Not grinding. Not performing. Just moving together with an ease that suggested this wasn't their first time. His phone buzzed. A message from Jiwon. Her date is Elliot Park. Corporate lawyer at Han and Associates. Clean record. No criminal ties. Boring as hell. Boring. Safe. Everything Seojun wasn't. On the dance floor, Elliot said something that made Diane laugh, really laugh, the kind that made her whole face light up. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with such casual tenderness that Seojun's hands clenched into fists. When did someone last touch her like that? When did he? He stopped that thought before it finished forming. This was Diane. His friend. His buddy. The girl who brought him midnight snacks when he was stressed and never asked uncomfortable questions about where his money came from. Except she wasn't that girl anymore. Or maybe she always had been someone else, and he'd just been too blind to see it. The thoughts settled in his stomach like lead. The night stretched on like torture. Seojun returned to his table, pretending to engage with his crew, but his eyes kept tracking Diane across the room. She moved through the space like she'd shed some invisible weight. Shoulders back. Head high. Every interaction genuine rather than apologetic. Men approached her constantly now. She handled each one with surprising grace, friendly but clear, never cruel but never uncertain. Since when does your buddy command a room like that? Miho asked, openly staring. She doesn't, Seojun muttered. It's just the dress. The makeup. Lighting makes everyone look different. Yeah, Jiwon said slowly. That's definitely what's different. The lighting. Son, he snorted into her drink. On the dance floor, Elliot's hand rested on Diane's waist. Not grabbing. Not pulling. Just existing there like it belonged. Like he'd earned the right through something other than proximity and assumption. Seojun downed his whiskey. Ordered another. He waited until Diane separated from Elliot, the lawyer heading toward the bar, before making his move. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. For a moment, she looked like the old Diane. Thoughtful. Distant. Alone even in a crowd. Interesting look, buddy, he said, forcing casual into his voice. Special occasion? She turned, and something in her expression made him pause. No nervousness. No eagerness to please. Just felt like trying something different. Her voice was calm. Steady. And the guy. His name is Elliot. A small smile played at her lips. He's kind. The way she said kind with emphasis, with meaning, felt like an accusation. Like she was pointing out everything Seojun wasn't. Kind? What does that mean? It means he's kind, Seojun. It's not complicated. I'm kind. You're a lot of things. She met his eyes directly. Kind isn't the first word I'd choose. Before he could respond, Elliot returned with 2 drinks. The lawyer assessed the situation immediately, the tension, Seojun's proximity, Diane's careful stillness. Everything okay? Elliot asked, positioning himself slightly between them without being obvious about it. Fine, Diane said warmly. Seojun, this is Elliot Park. Elliot, this is Seojun. A friend. Friend. The word landed like a slap. Not my best friend. Not my person. Just a friend. Downgraded. Demoted. Made equivalent to any casual acquaintance. Nice to meet you, Elliot said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, his smile genuine. Everything about him screamed stable, safe, legitimate. Everything Seojun couldn't offer. Likewise. Seojun forced a smile. Known Diane long? Few months. We met at a professional event. Elliot glanced at Diane with unmistakable affection. I've been trying to get her to give me a chance ever since. And here I thought she didn't date. She doesn't date people who don't see her, Elliot corrected gently. Fortunately, she's very easy to see. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Diane squeezed Elliot's hand. Should we get some air? Sure. Elliot nodded politely at Seojun. Good meeting you. They walked away together, Elliot's jacket appearing over her shoulders without her asking, and Seojun stood alone by the windows feeling like he'd just lost something he didn't know he'd been holding. Back at his table, Sunhee gave him a look. That went well. Shut up. He seems nice. Normal. Exactly what someone like Diane needs. What's that supposed to mean? It means she deserves someone whose idea of a relationship doesn't involve checking for exits and counting enemies. Sunhee's voice softened. You're not good for her, Seojun. You never were. You just didn't realize she had options until tonight. The words stung because they were true. A presence materialized beside their table, Min Jae-hyuk, dressed in expensive neutrals that screamed dangerous money. His smile was a shark smile, all teeth and no warmth. Seojun, Jae-hyuk said smoothly. Enjoying the party? What do you want, Jae-hyuk? Just making observations. Jae-hyuk's eyes tracked across the room. You seem distracted. Trouble in paradise. No trouble. Really? Because you've been staring at that woman all night. Jae-hyuk's gaze landed on Diane, now laughing at something Elliot said on the balcony. She's beautiful. Who is she? Every instinct in Seojun's body screamed danger. Just a friend. Introduce me. No. Jae-hyuk's smile widened. Interesting. The great Kang Seojun, possessive over just a friend. She's off limits. Everything's on limits in our world. You know that. Jae-hyuk pulled out his phone, snapping a discreet photo through the window. But don't worry. I'm just curious about who could make you lose your composure so completely. He walked away, leaving Seojun with cold dread settling in his chest. Miho leaned close. That's a problem. I know. He'll use her if he thinks she matters to you. She doesn't. Seojun stopped, the lie dying before it fully formed. On the balcony, Elliot tucked a strand of hair behind Diane's ear. She looked up at him, and even from this distance, Seojun could see the question in Elliot's expression. Are you happy? He couldn't hear her answer, but he saw her nod. Saw her smile. Saw her lean into someone else's safety, like she'd been waiting for permission her whole life. 30 minutes later, they left together. Elliot's jacket over her shoulders. Her hand in his. She glanced back once, just once, before the elevator doors closed. Not at Seojun specifically. Just at the party. At the life she was leaving behind. Through him. Seojun sat in his kingdom, surrounded by his people, holding power over rooms and lives and futures. And realized that for the first time in his life, the only thing he actually wanted was walking away. With someone else. 3 days after the party, Diane walked into her office building like she owned it. Her colleagues noticed immediately. Not the dress. She was back in professional clothes. But something had shifted in the way she carried herself. The apologetic hunch was gone. When she spoke in the morning meeting, people actually listened instead of talking over her. Diane, excellent analysis on the quarterly projections, her manager said, and for once, she didn't deflect the compliment. She just smiled and said, thank you. At 11, Elliot appeared at her office door holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, that gentle smile making her chest warm. It had become their routine. Coffee at 11. Lunch on Wednesdays. Text messages that made her laugh during boring meetings. You're too good to me, she said. I'm exactly as good as you deserve. He set the coffee down, studying her face. Dinner tonight? There's a place in Itaewon I think you'd love. I'd like that. He squeezed her hand before leaving, and Diane realized she was smiling at nothing. Just smiling because she could. That evening, rain caught them between the restaurant and the subway. They ran, laughing, until Elliot pulled her under an awning. Water dripped from his hair. His shirt stuck to his shoulders. He looked at her like she was the only real thing in the world. I'm going to kiss you now, he said softly. If that's okay. Instead of answering, Diane kissed him first. Gentle. Sweet. The kind of kiss that promised safety instead of chaos. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I never knew being wanted could feel safe. It should always feel safe, Elliot said, touching her cheek. Always. Across the city, Seojun sat in his office surrounded by files on Elliot Park. Corporate lawyer. Seoul National University. No criminal record. No debt. No scandals. Parents were respected academics. The man was so clean he practically squeaked. This made everything worse. Seojun couldn't find a single flaw to exploit. No addiction. No secret family. No questionable business dealings. Elliot Park was exactly what he appeared to be, a good man who wanted Diane for all the right reasons. Anything? Miho asked from the doorway. Nothing. He's perfect. Seojun threw the file across his desk. Completely, insufferably perfect. Maybe that's what she needs. I know that. Seojun's voice came out raw. I know she needs better than me. But I didn't think. He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. I didn't think she'd actually leave. At midnight, Seo-jun found himself at their convenience store. The one where they'd spent dozens of late nights eating ramen and talking about nothing. The owner recognized him, looked around for Diane, then understood. She hasn't been here in a week, the old woman said gently. New boyfriend. Seo-jun paid for a cup of ramen he didn't want and sat at their usual spot by the window. He remembered Diane laughing at his terrible jokes, bringing him snacks when he was stressed about a deal going wrong. The way she'd listened to his problems without judgment, offering solutions in that quiet, brilliant way of hers. I had her, he whispered to the empty store. She was always there. I never thought she'd leave. But why wouldn't she? He'd given her nothing but scraps and called it friendship. His phone buzzed. Miho, you need to see something. 20 minutes later, Seo-jun stood in Miho's tech room watching security footage from Eclipse. The audio quality was surprisingly clear. His own voice. Watch this. I invited Diane. She'll show up in cargo pants and make everyone uncomfortable. Laughter. His friends making bets. His own casual cruelty displayed in high definition. It's been circulating, Miho said quietly. Someone edited it, sent it around. People are talking. Let them talk. They're not mocking the joke, Seo-jun. They're mocking you for losing her to some nobody lawyer. You're becoming a punchline. Seo-jun didn't care about that. But then Miho pulled up another message. Someone sent the audio to Diane. Anonymous account. Untraceable. The room tilted. When? This morning. Seo-jun's phone rang. Diane. He answered immediately. Diane. I'm coming to your office. Her voice was ice. Don't leave. She walked in 30 minutes later, and Seo-jun's heart broke at the sight of her. The old Diane would have cried. Would have apologized for bothering him. This Diane stood in his doorway like she owned the space, eyes dry and furious. I heard what you said, she stated. The real reason you invited me. Diane, it wasn't, I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You invited me as a joke. Each word was a knife. Your awkward little buddy showing up to give everyone something to laugh at. I was being stupid. I didn't think. No, you didn't think. You never thought about how it felt to be the punchline of your life. She stepped closer. For 6 months, I thought I wasn't enough. I thought there was something wrong with me because you could never see me as anything but harmless. But I was wrong. You're not wrong. I wasn't the problem, Seo-jun. You were. I was performing for the wrong audience. Diane, please. You taught me something valuable, though. Her smile was bitter. You taught me that crumbs aren't love. That friendship without respect is just convenience. I do respect you. You made me small so you could feel big. The truth of it knocked the air from his lungs. I think I'm in love with you, he said desperately. The words he should have said months ago. I think I've been in love with you, and I was too blind and stupid to realize. No. Diane's voice cracked for the first time. You're not in love with me. You're in love with the idea of owning something someone else wants. You never wanted me when I was only yours. You want me now because Elliot does. That's not. Yes, it is. Tears finally appeared, but she didn't wipe them away. I loved you, Seo-jun. Quietly. Desperately. Pathetically. I would have given you everything. But you only started seeing me when I stopped looking at you. She turned toward the door. Diane, wait. Goodbye, Seo-jun. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that sounded like the end of the world. Seo-jun stood alone in his office, his kingdom of influence and power and control, and finally understood what he'd lost. Not a buddy. Not a sidekick. The woman who would have loved him through anything. And he'd thrown her away without even realizing she was precious. Diane sat in a quiet coffee shop in Gangnam, trying to feel human again. Confronting Seo-jun had taken everything she had. Her hands still shook. Diane Carter? She looked up to find a man in an impeccable gray suit standing beside her table. Handsome in a dangerous way. Smile like a knife. I'm Min Jae-hyuk. He sat without invitation. We haven't met officially, but I saw you at Eclipse. You're quite memorable. Every instinct screamed danger. I'm waiting for someone, she lied. I know. Your lawyer boyfriend. Don't worry, this won't take long. Jae-hyuk's smile never reached his eyes. You're the woman who broke Kang Seo-jun. That's impressive. I didn't think anyone could. I didn't break anyone. Please. He's been useless for days. Distracted. Weak. It's almost sad. Jae-hyuk leaned forward. I know about your visa situation, Diane. Work permit expired 3 weeks ago. Application stuck in bureaucratic hell. Her blood went cold. How do you? I know everything. It's my business to know. His voice dropped, deadly gentle. It would be unfortunate if immigration authorities received anonymous tips about irregularities in your paperwork. Fabricated references, perhaps. Financial discrepancies. I haven't done anything wrong. Truth doesn't matter. Investigation alone would get you deported. He pulled out his phone, showed her documents she'd never seen before, forgeries with her name on them. Unless you help me, what do you want? Information. You've worked on Seojin's spreadsheets, account numbers, transfer patterns. Help me access them, and your visa problems disappear. You can stay, build your life, keep your perfect boyfriend. Diane's mind raced. No. Jae-hyuk's expression didn't change. Think carefully. I said no. He stood slowly. Pity. You seem smart. But ask yourself something. Ask your lawyer boyfriend how clean his firm's dealings with Seojin's businesses were. He might not be the white knight you think. He walked away, leaving Diane trembling. That night, Diane couldn't stop herself. She searched Elliot's old firm, found connections to shell companies she recognized from Seojin's files. When Elliot arrived for dinner, she confronted him immediately. Your firm worked with Seojin. Elliot's face fell. Diane, you handled his shell companies. His accounts. You were part of his world. I was. Past tense. Elliot sat across from her, hands open. That's why I left the firm. I didn't want that life. Didn't want to be complicit. Did you know who I was when we met? I knew of Seojin. Knew he had someone who did his books. Elliot's voice was steady, honest. I didn't know it was you until later. But I approached you because I saw someone brilliant being treated like she was invisible. That's the truth. How do I know you're not? Watching you? Assigned to you. Pain crossed his features. You don't. Not completely. But I left that firm because I didn't want to live in that world. I chose a different path. And then I met you. Diane wanted to believe him. But Jae-hyuk's poison had worked. I need time, she whispered. Take all you need. Elliot stood, kissed her forehead. I'm not going anywhere. But as he left, doubt remained. Seojin learned about Jae-hyuk's move within hours. He approached her at a coffee shop, Miho reported. Threatened her visa status. Tried to recruit her. He what? Seojin was already reaching for his coat. There's more. He's digging into her background. Fabricating evidence. If she doesn't cooperate, he'll get her deported. Seojin found Jae-hyuk at a private club in Gangnam. Stay away from her, Seojin said, voice deadly quiet. Jae-hyuk smiled. Or what? You'll start a war over a woman? That's not like you, Seojin. You're pragmatic. Try me. She's already a target. Every enemy you have sees her as leverage now. Jae-hyuk's words were surgical. You care about her? You've already destroyed her safety. She'll never be free of your shadow. Every person who wants to hurt you will go through her first. The truth of it hit like a physical blow. You made her visible to the wrong people, Jae-hyuk continued. The kindest thing you could do is disappear from her life completely. Seojin left, Jae-hyuk's words echoing. Diane's phone rang the next morning. Her manager's voice was apologetic. I'm sorry, Diane. HR flagged issues with your work authorization. We have to let you go, effective immediately. She knew it was Jae-hyuk. Knew this was just the beginning. Elliot offered help. Seojin sent messages offering protection. But both felt like pity. Like obligation. That night, alone in her apartment with rain hammering the windows, Diane looked at her reflection. The woman who had transformed. Who had found her strength. Now trapped between two worlds, both dangerous, neither fully hers. I should have stayed invisible, she whispered to the empty room. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. She just didn't know what the truth was anymore. Yara let herself into Diane's apartment using the spare key, found her friend curled on the couch in 3-day-old pajamas, laptop open to job listings in other countries. Absolutely not, Yara said, closing the laptop firmly. I can't stay here. Jae-hyuk will. Jae-hyuk will what? Win because you gave up. Yara sat down, forcing Diane to look at her. You think this is about them? You transformed yourself, found your strength, and now you're letting men, all of them, define what that means. They're trying to help. They're trying to save you. There's a difference. Yara's voice softened. Remember what I told you that night? You're not becoming someone else. You're just turning the lights on. So stop letting other people hold the switch. Diane sat up slowly. What am I supposed to do? Jae-hyuk has connections, resources. And you have a brain that runs circles around his. Yara pulled out her phone. You worked on Seojin's accounts for months. You know how these operations function. Stop thinking like a victim. Start thinking like the analyst who sees patterns no one else can. Something shifted in Diane's chest. The fog of fear clearing. I don't need saving, she whispered. I need strategy. There she is. Yara smiled. There's my girl. Diane spent 18 hours researching. Jae-hyuk's operation was elegant, fabricated documents, strategic leaks, pressure at precise weak points. But every system had flaws. Every criminal made mistakes. She found his pattern in the spreadsheets she'd once handled for Seojun. Transactions that didn't quite add up. Shell companies with suspiciously similar structures. Then she found his current target, a city council member considering anti-corruption legislation. Jae-hyuk needed Seojin's cooperation to apply the right pressure. But more importantly, Diane had access to proof of Jae-hyuk's methods. Files she'd backed up months ago, never knowing they'd matter. Evidence that would expose not just his current scheme, but years of operation. She made 2 calls. First, Elliot. I need a lawyer. Not a boyfriend. Not a protector. Can you be that? Silence, then, yes. I can be both, actually. If you'll let me prove the difference. Come over. We need to talk. Really talk. Elliot arrived with Thai food and no expectations. They sat on her floor, containers between them, and finally had the conversation they should have had from the beginning. I'm scared, Diane admitted. Of trusting you. Of this being real. I'm scared too, Elliot said. That I'm not enough. That my past with that firm means you'll never fully believe me. Were you watching me? Be honest. No. I saw you at that networking event looking like you wanted to disappear, and I thought you were the most interesting person in the room. I asked Yara about you. She told me you were brilliant and kind and completely unaware of either fact. He met her eyes. I didn't approach you because of Seojun. I approached you despite knowing his world existed. Because I wanted out of that world, and you seemed like proof that good people still existed in this city. Diane studied his face, searching for lies, finding only truth. I don't want someone to save me, she said quietly. I need someone who'll stand beside me while I save myself. That, Elliot said, moving closer, I can absolutely do. He kissed her, and this time it wasn't gentle. It was certain. A promise. When they pulled apart, Diane smiled. Now let me tell you my plan. The next morning, Diane walked into Seojin's office unannounced. He looked up, surprise and pain crossing his features. Diane. Jae-hyuk is your problem, she said, placing a folder on his desk. He's my problem. Let's make him regret making either of us problems. Seojun stared at her. What? I have evidence. Files from your old accounts that I backed up. They prove Jae-hyuk's fabrication methods, trace his money laundering patterns. But I can't use them alone. I need your credibility, your connections, and your willingness to burn a bridge. You came here to ask for my help? No. Diane held his gaze. I came here to offer alliance. There's a difference. Seojun stood slowly, studying her like he was seeing a completely different person. When did you become this? I was always this. You just never looked close enough. He moved around the desk, stopping close enough that she could feel the old electricity crackling between them. His hand lifted, hesitated, then touched her face with devastating gentleness. I see you now, he whispered. I know. Diane didn't pull away. But I don't need you to anymore. I see myself. Something broke in his expression. Pride and heartbreak mixed together. Then let me fight beside you anyway, he said. Not because you need me. Because I need to be the person who stands with you instead of in your way. Diane nodded. Okay. 3 days later, they gathered at Seojin's office, Diane, Elliot, Seojun, and his core team. The tension between Elliot and Seojun was thick enough to cut. You hurt her, Elliot said quietly, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. I already hurt her, Seojun replied. I'm trying not to make that my only legacy. Both of you, focus, Diane interrupted. Jae-hyuk is presenting his partnership opportunity at the Seoul Business Summit in 2 days. That's our window. She spread documents across the table, financial records, audio recordings, traced connections. I'll present the evidence, Diane continued. Elliot handles the legal framework. Seo-jun, you get me floor time and credibility. Your presence tells everyone this isn't just some disgruntled employee. People will ask why you're helping, Miho pointed out to Seo-jun. Let them. Seo-jun's eyes never left Diane. Maybe it's time I did something right. Elliot placed legal documents in front of Diane. Your visa renewal. Approved this morning through legitimate channels. Whatever happens, you're staying. Tears pricked her eyes. You did this. You did this. I just filed the paperwork. He squeezed her hand. You're not going anywhere. Across the table, Seo-jun watched their interaction with bittersweet understanding. 2 days, Diane said, voice steady despite everything. We end this. They planned until dawn, 3 people from different worlds finding common ground in protecting one woman who'd finally learned to protect herself. And for the first time since this began, Diane felt something she hadn't in weeks. Hope. The Seoul Business Summit took place in a glass tower overlooking the Han River. Politicians, business leaders, and Seoul's elite gathered for what they thought would be networking and presentations. They had no idea they were about to witness an execution. Diane walked in flanked by 2 men who represented her past and her future. She wore deep blue, professional, powerful, impossible to ignore. Jae-hyuk stood at the front, mid-presentation about strategic partnership opportunities. His smile was confident, predatory. Then he saw her. The smile faltered. Seo-jun raised his hand. I'd like to yield my scheduled time to Ms. Carter. She has information relevant to today's discussions. Murmurs rippled through the room. Jae-hyuk's eyes narrowed. That's highly irregular, someone started. Ms. Carter is an expert financial analyst, Elliot said, standing. Her presentation addresses fraud prevention. Surely that's relevant to everyone here. The moderator, influenced by Seo-jun's reputation, nodded. Ms. Carter, you have the floor. Diane walked to the podium, connected her laptop, and looked directly at Jae-hyuk. I'm here to discuss how fabricated evidence is used for blackmail and extortion in Seoul's business community. Jae-hyuk's face went blank. Her first slide showed document comparisons, originals versus Jae-hyuk's forgeries. Her presentation was methodical, devastating. She traced money through shell companies, showed patterns of illegal surveillance, exposed years of operation. These techniques, she continued, voice steady, were used to threaten my visa status, my employment, and my safety when I refused to provide information for criminal purposes. She played the audio from the coffee shop. Jae-hyuk's voice, crystal clear, making threats. The room erupted in whispers. Jae-hyuk stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. She's an illegal worker with criminal connections. He pointed at Seo-jun. She works for Kang Seo-jun. Everyone knows his reputation. She's playing both sides, probably sleeping with half this room. Careful, Seo-jun's voice cut through the noise like ice. But Diane didn't need defending. My visa status is legal and current, she said calmly. Elliot held up documentation. I've never been involved in criminal activity. And my personal relationships are irrelevant to the evidence before you. She advanced her presentation. Financial records she'd backed up months ago, now showing Jae-hyuk's money laundering, his fabrication network, his blackmail targets, including 2 people in this room. These files were obtained legally during my work as a financial analyst. They've been verified by independent forensic accountants. She looked at Jae-hyuk. Would you like to explain these transactions? Jae-hyuk's composure cracked. He moved toward the podium. Both Elliot and Seo-jun shifted forward. But Diane was ready. Years of self-defense classes with Yara paid off in one smooth motion. She sidestepped, redirected his momentum, and sent him stumbling into security guards who'd been alerted by Seo-jun's team. The room exploded. Authorities present, invited by Elliot's careful planning, moved forward with arrest warrants based on Diane's evidence. Jae-hyuk was restrained, still struggling, screaming accusations that no one believed anymore. Outside, away from cameras and chaos, 3 people stood in the late afternoon sun. Seo-jun looked at Elliot. Take care of her. Then he corrected himself, glancing at Diane. Actually, let her take care of herself. Just be there when she wants you. Elliot nodded with understanding and respect. Seo-jun turned to Diane. His expression held everything he couldn't say. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it. For not seeing. I know. Diane touched his hand briefly. Thank you. For showing up when it mattered. He lifted his hand to her face one last time, memorizing her features. Then kissed her forehead, blessing and goodbye. Be happy, he whispered. I will be. She walked away with Elliot, their hands linked, their future uncertain but theirs. Seojun watched until they disappeared around the corner. Miho appeared beside him. You okay? No, Seojun said honestly. But I will be. For the first time in his life, he'd let someone go because they deserved better. It hurt like hell, but it was the most loving thing he'd ever done. The fluorescent lights of the corporate office didn't feel like a cage anymore. They felt like a stage. Diane sat at her mahogany desk, her natural hair styled in a chic, confident taper, wearing a tailored cream blazer over a simple silk camisole. She wasn't hiding behind oversized sweaters or safe colors anymore. A junior analyst, a young woman who reminded Diane painfully of her former self, hovered by her cubicle. Ms. Carter? I don't think my ideas are good enough for the board meeting. Diane looked up, a warm, genuine smile breaking across her face. She reached out and placed a hand on the girl's arm. They don't see you because you're making yourself small, Sarah. Stop performing for them. Just turn the lights on. You're brilliant. Make them look. Watching the girl walk away with a straighter spine, Diane felt a surge of quiet triumph. She was paying Yara's gift forward, one spark at a time. Later that evening, the scent of garlic and rosemary filled the airy apartment she now shared with Elliot. The space was a sanctuary of soft textures and shared books. The sauce needs more salt, Elliot teased, sneaking a taste over her shoulder. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. Diane laughed, leaning her head back. The sauce is perfect, you're just looking for an excuse to hover. He turned her in his arms, his expression becoming serious, his eyes searching hers with that same unwavering devotion he'd shown since the night they met. Happy? Genuinely, Diane whispered, her heart full. Finally. The dinner was eventually forgotten. In the quiet dimness of their bedroom, their connection felt like a prayer. There was no performance here, no need to prove her worth. As Elliot traced the curve of her shoulder, whispering how beautiful she was, Diane didn't look away. She leaned into the heat, into the safety of being truly seen. She wasn't just a buddy or a sidekick. She was the lead in her own life, cherished and desired. Afterward, tangled in the sheets, they spoke in low tones about the future, about a small house by the coast, about names for children, and the legal clinic they wanted to open together. I used to think love was a prize you had to earn by being perfect, Diane said, tracing the lines of his palm. Love isn't a prize, Diane, Elliot replied, kissing her forehead. It's a partnership. And I'm just lucky you picked me to be your partner. A few weeks later, Diane was grabbing a coffee in the city when she spotted a familiar silhouette near the window. Seojun. He wasn't surrounded by a wall of black-suited men. He was sitting at a small table with a woman who wore a simple sundress. She was laughing, reaching across the table to wipe a bit of foam from his lip. She didn't look at him like he was a terrifying mafia king. She looked at him like he was just a man. Diane walked over, her heart steady. Seojun looked up, and for a moment, the old intensity flared in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a soft, peaceful recognition. Diane, he said, standing up respectfully. Seojun. You look, well. I am, he said, gesturing to his companion. This is Hannah. Hannah, this is an old friend. The woman who taught me how to actually see. They exchanged a few pleasantries. There was no lingering regret, no what if. The fire that had once burned between them had settled into a cool, mutual respect. You look happy, Diane, Seojun said. I am. You. Getting there, he admitted with a wry, honest smile. I'm learning. As Diane walked out of the shop, she saw her reflection in the glass door. She saw a woman who had walked through fire and come out forged in gold. She hadn't changed because of the pain, she had evolved through it. I was never invisible, she whispered to her reflection. I just needed to see myself first. Elliot was waiting by the curb, his face lighting up the moment he saw her. He reached out, his fingers interlaced with hers, and together they walked into the bright afternoon sun. They were two whole people, walking the same path, leaving the shadows behind forever. A question for the My Dear viewers. If Seojun had realized his feelings and apologized before Diane met Elliot and transformed her life, do you think she should have stayed with him, or was their buddy dynamic always destined to fail? Let me know your thoughts.